Thanks for tuning in today to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. It's really important to understand the soils that you're working with, and one of the numbers that we want you to know on your soil is the cation exchange capacity. We'll explain its importance today.
We're also going to discuss soybean harvest that's coming up. Specifically, what is the moisture of the bean coming out of your field? How are you going to store it in the bin? We've got a few tips for you that can help you make some more money on your farm this year.
Got a tough to control weed of the week too, but first, here's our farm basics.
You spend all year working hard to get as much yield as possible at harvest. The last thing you want to do is put your grain in the bin and have it spoil before you take it to market. Introducing the Grain Temp Guard from Farm Shop MFG. Designed and built by a farmer looking for a low-cost monitoring solution for existing bins, the Grain Temp Guard tracks temperature and humidity with an alarm system to alert you when your grain exceeds safe thresholds. For more information on a system for your bins, visit farmshopmfg.com.
One of our biggest concerns in 2020 is what we call Fallow Syndrome. Today during our Farm Basics time, we're going to talk about exactly what that is and how it can be prevented. If you go back to the August USDA crop report, they said that 19 million acres in the United States went unplanted. 19 million! So all those acres are at risk, plus a whole bunch more acres that got crop destroyed early in the season.
Well, you don't have to go very far to find acres where there's not a crop growing, and that's what we're talking about with this whole fallow syndrome. We're talking about fallow being, hey, there's no crop growing on this ground. Now, a year later, we're trying to raise a crop in this ground, and there's a negative impact. When soil has living plants in it, that's a great thing because the soil is full of living things. There's all kinds of microbes in that soil that need a living host. And when you don't have that, when you go a fallow year, you're going to have issues next year because those microbial populations have gone down or gone away. Now we see this often in the West where we see this chem-fallow rotation where farmers will say, well, I'm going to take a year off, I'm going to try to replenish the soil with moisture, and then the next year I'll have 2 years of moisture to go on. That's a great thought, but are you really going to trap all that moisture when you let ground go fallow on purpose? And then what are the other downsides? So this year in 2019, we saw so many farms that just couldn't get planted because they were too wet. We're going to talk about that today.
Okay, so here's what fallow syndrome actually is. When you plant corn in the spring following a fallow year, what we commonly see is that corn turns purple early in the season. The reason why is many of the mycorrhiza fungi die the year before because there's no host crop. Mycorrhiza fungi, their purpose in the soil is they will help bring nutrients that aren't normally available to the plant. They'll help convert those nutrients into a form the plant can use and actually bring them to and in the plant.
Well, you think about these tiny little fungi, they're way smaller than even the root hairs on our crops. So they can get into those tiny little crevices out there, or through enzyme or chemical activity that they're going to have around them, they can make some nutrients that are tied up break free so they can bring them into the plant.
Now you might say, well, why do these fungi do this great thing for the plant? What do they get? Well, what they get from the plant is sugars. And when we think about plants, we often think about, oh, those roots are there to bring in water and nutrients. That's great. But those roots are also there to kick out organic acids, to make nutrients more available, and to provide sugars for some of these beneficial microbes that are in the soil.
And we just named one of the many species that are out in the soil that require a living host. And in exchange, they're doing some work to help that plant as well.
So very commonly what we see, if there's been a fallow year and nothing is grown on that ground, the following year when corn is planted, we will commonly see 30 to 50 bushel yield losses. We don't want that to happen to any farmer out there. So the solution is raise a cover crop this year, or raise some crop that will support many of these microbes that are beneficial to the next crop. Most commonly, we're going to think about a lot of the grass species, whether that's rye or oats or wheat, but there are a lot of different crops that could help those beneficial fungi and bacteria that are in the soil. We would just say, though, don't just plant Radishes, for example, radishes don't support mycorrhiza fungi. If you're going to use a cover crop, use a blend. That's your best bet for getting the most beneficial organisms ready to go for your next crop.
As Brian mentioned, there are at least 19 million acres in the United States alone this year that are going to have to deal with this issue. Now, many of those acres did get a cover crop on them, but some did not. So you'll notice some farmers around the country putting a cover crop in the fall or in the early spring, making some adjustments to their cropping plan to try to offset what's going to happen with fallow syndrome.
Okay, last thing that I would say is, if, let's say, you know of a farmer, or you are a farmer, who had this happen and you didn't get a cover crop, or you decide not to put a cover crop out there at all, and all you do is have that ground black, absolutely don't plant corn the next year. You have to plant soybeans or some other crop, or you're going to suffer this 30 to 50 bushel yield loss, which usually happens.
Well, fallow syndrome is a scary thing, but so is controlling our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed later in the show.
Out here, great yield starts with great weed control. That's why I choose the Roundup Ready Extend crop system, the system that makes the difference, because only I know what it takes out here. Yield's what it's all for. But keeping my fields clean all season, that's what it's all about. This is my field.
Tough, precise, efficient. Strip tillage with the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm. Learn more at soilwarrior.com/agphd.
Avoid dry run failures with the new Hi-Pro Force Field pump. Providing the ultimate protection, this wet seal pump will save you on costly in-season downtime to keep your sprayer running. Now all you have to worry about is the weather. Hi-Pro, helping you spray better.
There are a lot of steps to having a perfect season. Don't let your fertilizer plan be the step that trips you up. No matter when you apply fertilizer, no matter how, AgroLiquid has the experts and the products that'll help you move closer to your target and hit the bullseye. AgroLiquid moves you closer to your target.
Do you feel like there's never enough time to get everything done before planting? The window for spring work is quick and unforgiving. Give yourself the upper hand with the ProTill High Performance High Speed Disc. More and more farmers agree the ProTill is the right tool for spring field conditions and heavy residue management. Zero maintenance bearings, independent disc technology, oversized pins and bushings allow the ProTill to handle whatever field or conditions you can throw at it. Degelman High Performance Equipment.
If you're getting ready to harvest your soybeans, one of the most important things we want you to think about is, what is your ideal harvest moisture? Now, most people are going to say 13%. Well, that's great, but you probably only have a very, very, very narrow window to harvest 13% moisture beans. So today we're going to talk about harvesting wet beans versus harvesting excessively dry soybeans.
Well, fortunately, Brian, everybody's got some experience with both extremes, because you start off when it's a little wet, and if you get that hot, sunny, breezy day, by the time you're done with the field, it's dry. It changes really quick out in the field. So what you want to have is more flexibility to what you're doing. Now, when you've got dry soybeans, you've got a huge economic loss. This is something that we've approached many times on our show, talking about not only did you lose when you dropped down to 8% moisture beans, you lost from 13% that the elevator would take with no docks down to 8%. That's a 5% loss that you could have sold. You also lose the shrink on that, because your soybeans actually shrink up a little bit, and by the time you get those beans to the elevator, you typically have a 1.5% loss for each 1% of moisture that you didn't harvest. So if you lost 5% in moisture, you probably lost 7.5% on yield, and that is a killer.
So Darren mentioned 7.5% yield loss. That's huge. I think about our farm. If I'm going to get 70 bushel beans, I'm hoping I can sell them for $10 an acre. That's $700. That means $50 an acre in loss. $50. Well, we don't want to lose that much money, so obviously every farmer out there wants to have wetter soybeans. Well, here's the whole thing. If you say, well, boy, I don't want to go harvest 14% moisture beans because if I bring those to the elevator, I'll take a little bit of a dock. Well, how much is the elevator going to dock you? It's not $50 an acre. My point is this, start running the math. You'll quickly find that 14 or 15% moisture beans are way better to bring to the elevator than 8% moisture beans. And I know what you're going to say. You're going to look at the settlement sheet you get and you're going to see a dock on the 14 or 15% moisture beans. When you get the 8% moisture beans, you won't see any dock. But it's hidden yield loss. And that's the whole thing. You've got to make sure that anybody understanding this, anybody looking at the numbers on your farm knows, hey, we absolutely have to make sure we are maximizing the amount of bushels we bring to town, which means we need those beans around 13%.
Well, the great thing is if you're going to harvest beans a little bit wetter, you can get started earlier. You've got more hours available to be able to run a combine. If you say, I've got to have soybeans less than 13% in the field, your hours of operation go way down. And I don't care where you're at. If you get a little bit of dew in the morning, you're generally waiting till noon to be able to start on those soybeans. Well, if you're harvesting them a little bit wetter, you can get going earlier in the day. So that really helps you out as well. Now, the other thing, Brian, is shatter loss. As we see those beans get really dry, we just flat lose beans in the field or we lose beans at the header. And again, here's something that you don't see show up at the elevator and, oh, we lost this much. You see it laying all over the ground out in your field. I hear farmers all across the country complaining, our soybean price just isn't good enough. In fact, I'm looking for another crop to raise. Hey, there is money to be made in soybeans. We just can't leave bushels literally laying out there in the field.
All right, here's what we want you to consider. Bin fan controls. It's only going to cost you a few $100s per grain bin that you have. And now you can have those fans turn on and turn off depending on what your outside temperature is and humidity. And if you simply have the fan running at the right time, shut off at what we'll call the wrong times, then you can very quickly move your grain moisture down from 17 or 15 down to 13. You actually can pump moisture back into that grain too, just simply by putting air on the grain. This is a really big deal. It's something we started doing on our farm probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I'll just give you the example of the fall of 2018. Well, most people were sitting because the beans were too wet. They were 15, 16, 18% moisture. We were harvesting. So this allowed us to get done way faster so we could get a lot of our fall field work done where a lot of other people were sitting. The other thing it did is it allowed us to have the beans right at 13%. So they were able to store properly. We were able to maximize the amount of bushels that we hauled to the elevator, and we could maximize our profitability because we didn't have to take docks at the elevator as well.
If you're raising soybeans this year, there is still time for you to make some changes on your farm. So consider bin fan controls and take a look, just run the economics about harvesting soybeans just a little bit wetter this year. We think it'll put money in your pocket each and every year.
Well, another thing that puts money in your pocket each and every year is having great weed control. We'll show you how to stop this week's weed coming up later in the show.
Why do I farm? It's just something I've always wanted to do, something I've known since I was my daughter's age. I think about what kind of farm I'm going to hand over to her, about how I can make it more successful, more sustainable. I talk to other farmers, with agronomists and advisors to help me make better decisions, to figure out what's working for them and how to make it work even better for my farm. Because when you farm, you have a responsibility to keep it growing, to look at a freshly planted field, a newborn calf, even your bottom line. Then ask yourself, how do I help this grow? How can I make it even more productive? I ask myself these questions every day, because no matter what I'm doing, I'm still a farmer.
I need results, so I choose the one system I trust to take weeds down and keep them down on even my toughest acres with the kind of yield potential that helps keep me in the black to deliver my kind of results season after season. I choose the Roundup Ready Extend crop system. I choose results.
I've been completely satisfied with the job that XtendiMax has done.
It's a good product. It kills the weeds.
I'm extremely happy with my weed control. We're going 100% Extend next year as well.
This might be the best overall farm average on soybeans I'll have.
It works so much better than anything else that we used in the past.
It's been remarkable. We have seen a tremendous yield potential increase.
The XtendiMax takes the weeds down.
It just flat out works.
There are a lot of steps to having a perfect season. Don't let your fertilizer plan be the step that trips you up. No matter when you apply fertilizer, no matter how, AgroLiquid has the experts and the products that'll help you move closer to your target and hit the bullseye. AgroLiquid moves you closer to your target.
One of the most important things you need to get on your soil test report this fall is cation exchange capacity, or we often say CEC for short. So today we want to explain exactly what is cation exchange capacity and why is it so important for you to know.
Cation exchange capacity is a simple way and a consistent way across your soils and over time for you to measure the holding capacity of your soil. It's a measurement of the amount of clay, the type of clay, and the amount of organic matter that you have in your soil. So it's a pretty stable number from year to year.
Here's the reason why we like having this number, because Darren and I talk to farmers all over the world, and one of our most common questions is, how heavy is your soil? Well, as a farmer, you probably call some of your soil heavy and some of it light. Well, this is all relative. I was in Canada last year and I had a farmer come up to me and say, "Yep, can you help me fix my light sandy ground?" I looked at it and it was a 33 cation exchange capacity. And I go, light and sandy? This is super heavy soil. And he goes, "Well, it's not nearly as heavy as my other ground." He showed me that. It was a 41 CEC. Okay, so for that farmer, 33 was light. So the reason why we want this CEC number is so we're all on the same page. We really know now, are we actually talking about heavy ground? Are we actually talking about light ground? Where do you fall in that range?
You know, when we look at CEC, we hear the argument sometimes from people that say, well, this isn't exactly going to tell you how much zinc you need in your ground or how much phosphorus you need in your ground. And I agree with that. It doesn't tell us exactly how much to put out there of each nutrient. However, it does give us a good rough estimate when it comes to nitrogen at how much we can actually hold in our soil versus how much we would put on that would be at risk of leaching. What we typically use for a nitrogen number is we'll take the cation exchange capacity measurement and multiply times 10. And that gives us a rough estimate of how many pounds of nitrogen we can hold in the soil at any one time. So for example, say your CEC is around 10, well, 10 times 10 would be 100 pounds of nitrogen that you could hold safely at any one point.
And on the flip side, if let's say you had a 3 CEC, you can only hold about 30 pounds. If you had a 25 CEC, you can hold roughly 250 pounds. So it gives you a general range. It's not going to be exact, but at least it gets you relatively close. And the other thing, well, Darren said, yeah, it's not going to tell you exactly how much zinc you need or how much phosphorus you need. In order to change any ratios in the soil, like let's say with base saturation, your base saturation K number is low. Well, it's way easier to change your percentage or your ratio of potassium to some of the other nutrients when you have lighter soil as opposed to when you have heavier soil. So it just gives me a real quick estimation of, okay, is this going to be expensive to get this guy's soil fixed, or is it going to be inexpensive?
The other thing, Brian, that cation exchange capacity is not, it's not a measurement of the productivity index of your soil. So if you have a 20 versus if you have a 5, that doesn't mean, oh, I've got much more potential in that 20 CEC soil. Now some years the 20 may raise a better crop, but when you think about where the world record corn's been grown, it's been grown on soil a lot closer to a 5. So just because your CEC is low doesn't mean you can't have high productivity there too.
No, but what it does mean in many cases is you're going to have to manage it more intensively. The heavier that soil, the more water it will hold, the more nutrients it will hold, the more of everything it will hold. So you can load everything up and then hopefully things just work out for you. But with that light soil, it's going to take continual adjustments as you go through the season.
Cation exchange capacity is an important number to know when you're pulling soil samples this fall. Make sure that your tests include cation exchange capacity. One thing you may notice out in fields, even this late in the year, is our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop it, coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is brought to you by Corteva Agriscience, Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont. Finish the fight against tough weeds with the Enlist Weed Control System.
Weeds are tough, but we're tougher. With unrivaled weed control, reduced drift, and near zero volatility. So, who's tough now?
Weed of the week is green pepper weed.
You know, Brian, growing up, we had green pepper weed around. We just see it here and there. It was never really a big problem for us. I didn't even realize there's a perennial pepper weed out there too. Yep. And it got me thinking that, you know, one of the biggest things when you say, well, how do you stop green pepper weed? Well, first of all, make sure it's green pepper weed. Make sure it's not perennial pepper weed, because a perennial is a whole different challenge.
Well, it is, but I mean, let's face it. Pepper weed is not super competitive. So as a corn and soybean and wheat farmer, am I really that worried about this weed? Usually I'm not. We've got a lot of ways to control it. And also, if you just have good crop canopy, that's usually going to choke it out.
All right, well, what I was getting at, Brian, is if it's perennial pepperweed, I would use Roundup. Now, you could certainly use Roundup to control the annual green pepperweed as well. However, there are lots of other options that can control green pepperweed. First of all, where we would normally see green pepperweed was in ditches, at the edge of tree belts, in farmyards, those kinds of places, and you could kill it really easily with 2,4-D, provided you used a high enough rate. And this is something too, Brian, for growers that complain, hey, 2,4-D is not getting it done for me. Most of the time when I say, well, what's your rate? Well, I don't know. I just put a couple ounces in my tank and I went out and sprayed. Well, they're not using enough rate.
That's right. And, you know, it's real easy for us out in the field, on big fields, as you know, when you've got precise equipment and we dial that rate right in. But when you're spraying around your farmyard, it is hard to get that rate right. So a lot of times what I would look at with 2,4-D is, unless I'm turning that grass just slightly brown, I usually haven't pushed the rate far enough. Okay.
Well, this is coming from the guy who wants to get it done the first time. I don't want to have to respray. So I do understand that. Now, out in fields, as you mentioned, we can dial in precise rates. And also, we've got a lot of other options besides using 2,4-D. Like in soybeans, for example, our 3-Pre program works really well. Metribuzin does a nice job, and Authority and Valor are good options to have in that 3-Pre mix. They'll get you set up for success. In crop, of course, you can use Roundup or Liberty in crops where they're labeled, or dicamba products or 2,4-D products like the new Enlist 1, for example.
Again, where they're labeled.
Where they're labeled. Otherwise, with conventional products, I've had probably the best luck using Pursuit plus some Flex Star. That's been my favorite combo.
All right, if you turn to corn, I would probably start with Verdict, and then I'd follow up with Status. If you throw a little atrazine in, that could help as well. In wheat, I'd probably go with Sharpen first, follow with Husky later on. And again, like Darren said, you know, when you get to these non-crop areas, that's usually where we see this weed. So it's where grass has gotten mowed down too much. The pasture has gotten eaten down too much. So just make sure you are having or allowing your grass to compete as good as it can against all weeds. And usually this isn't a big issue.
That's all the time we have for our Weed of the Week, green pepper weed, but there's more Ag PhD to come right after this.
You spend all year working hard to get as much yield as possible at harvest. The last thing you want to do is put your grain in the bin and have it spoil before you take it to market. Introducing the Grain Temp Guard from Farm Shop MFG. Designed and built by a farmer looking for a low-cost monitoring solution for existing bins, the Grain Temp Guard tracks temperature and humidity with an alarm system to alert you when your grain exceeds safe thresholds. For more information on a system for your bins, visit farmshopmfg.com.
What's the most complex industry on Earth? It isn't big data or commodities, not genetics, or meteorology, or even logistics. It's a business that involves them all. It's farming. And we're proud to work with generations of American farmers in the most complex and rewarding industry on Earth.
Your planter is the single most important piece of equipment on your farm, because without a uniform stand, you can't reach maximum yield. That's why Harvest International set out to design a planter that takes advantage of the newest innovations in planter technology. Built tough for high speed and integrated with the latest precision enhancements, Harvest International planters ensure every seed you plant today puts more in your bin at harvest. Harvest International, planting the future.
If you're looking to expand your farm's grain handling, you want everything to be fast and efficient. The Quick Belt from Norwood Sales is your all-around grain handling solution. Our conveyor-based system uses an 18-inch belt and a 10-inch tube, which minimizes seed damage while moving more than 10,000 bushels an hour. That's fast enough to fill a semi in 6 minutes. Plus, our hood is designed to gently direct the flow of grain straight down, keeping your crop in condition. Keep your grain and your farm moving with the Quick Belt from Norwood Sales.
In 1949, Morton Buildings constructed our first machine storage building to establish our bond with the farming community. Since then, our relationship has grown, and so have our product offerings. From the smallest specialized operation to the largest agricultural enterprise, we understand the needs of your business and continue to evolve to meet industry demands. Plus, when you build a Morton building, you're backed by the strongest warranty in the business. To learn more about the Morton Advantage, visit mortonbuildings.com.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
At Harvest, you have one goal: finding the perfect flow of grain from the field to the bin. Case IH axial flow combines are engineered for matched capacity to deliver proven grain savings, so you can keep efficiency flowing smoothly. Find yours with the Case IH axial flow.
The awareness of soil pH issues and the agricultural use of lime to fix the low pH areas is a hot topic right now. We'll discuss lime and how to apply it in today's Iron Talk. Raising a low pH back up into the 6s has been a great return on investment on farms across the country. The other reason liming is on the rise is simply to build the calcium levels in various soils regardless of pH, whether it's to loosen up a tight, high magnesium clay soil or to balance out fertility levels in general. Calcium, and especially lime, is in high demand. Unfortunately, you need a lime spreader to get the job done unless you're going to use pelletized lime. Now, the chain and paddle drive on a regular spinner spreader, well, it just can't move a bulk ag lime product. For most farms, it may mean hiring someone to spread the lime. On our farm, we've been using water treatment plant lime from a nearby city who had contracted with a professional to spread the lime for people. We're also hearing livestock manure spreaders with vertical beaters can be used if managed closely. Well, no matter how you do it, accurately spreading lime can be a big benefit in the right soils, but you need to grid or zone soil sample to target the right lime rates and applications to fit the areas of the field that'll benefit from it. Also, while you don't need tillage to get the lime to work, tillage can speed up the impact that it has on your soil. If you're doing tillage, it doesn't have to be super deep, as most of the plant's root systems will be in the top 6 inches of soil, and that's the area that you need to impact most commonly. For no-till guys, my biggest advice is just don't wait. Get the lime out there in the fall after harvest so rainfall can move it down in the soil and begin the reaction that you're looking for. That's all for today's Iron Talk on lime, and now back to the show.
Well, that's our time for today, but if you're looking for more agronomic information, we'd invite you to check out the Ag PhD Insider magazine. You can just go to agphdinsider.com to learn more.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.